Welcome everybody to the May 2023 Streets for All Happy Hour. We're so excited to have Councilmember Hernandez on with us today. And I also want to point out that this is the very first sponsored Streets for All Happy Hour, and we're grateful to Lime for making that happen. We're going to give a quick update on our efforts in Sacramento, talk about the LADOT budget, give you an update on some past and future events, talk about the horrific crash at Hancock Park Elementary, go over a few wins and fails, and get to our conversation with the council member. Our icebreaker this time is, what is your favorite public space in Council District 1? So I'm going to turn it over to Bubba, who's going to give us an update on the state team and answer that question. Bubba.
Thanks, Michael. I'm going to do some thinking on that one. I have a few other things I'm presenting, so I'll get an answer on my next one. But for the state team, we are very excited to report that all 11 bills that we have sponsored in Sacramento this year, this legislative session, have passed their first House Policy Committee. So if they were introduced in the Assembly, this square in the top left-hand corner, then they've passed all the policy committees in the Assembly, and the same if they were introduced in the Senate. So 11 bills to make our transportation system safer, more affordable, and more sustainable, all passed their policy committees. And now we're into the fiscal committee of both the appropriation, the Assembly and the Senate. And once we're through that, we're going to go to the House, the first House, whatever House it's originating in, for a vote. So we will let you know how it's going, but so far so good. And those bills, for those who need a refresher, those bills, we have bills about unbundling your parking from your rent, so your cost of your rent goes down. Bills about mandating more visibility at crosswalks, about decriminalizing fare evasion, about legalizing biking on the sidewalk when there's no bike lanes. If you go to the next slide, bills centered around transparency for data that we get from Caltrans, creating a speed camera pilot program, and preventing landlords from prohibiting e-bikes in their apartment complexes and housing projects. So we're really excited about the slate of bills that we have, and just happy that they're all still here. Hopefully all 11 will get signed into law. If you go to the next slide, this is our resource for if you want to look into each of the bills. We're still building it out, but please go to streetsforall.org/2023-state-bills. I'll put that in the chat as well for y'all. And take a look at all the bills that we've sponsored this year. And pretty soon we're going to have all of our bills that we're supporting there too. And if you want to help out with our state efforts, we'd love to have you. First and foremost, you can contact your assembly member and your senator and tell them to support these 11 bills. Send them the page and maybe even point out one or two that you're particularly passionate about. And secondly, get your organization on board. If you are on a neighborhood council, or if you are on the sustainability committee of a corporation, or whatever, we could use your support, and sending in a letter is the best way to do that. So go to, contact me at bubba@streetsforall.org if you want more info, but that would be a huge help to getting these bills through the legislature. And then also, if you really want to, get deeper involved and get your hands dirty, please come work with us, streetsforall.org/get-involved, and you can work with us on the state team on these very exciting bills. And also, if you don't have time for that, just donate. We'll take your money. Thank you so much. So the link I'll put in the chat for how you can donate to our advocacy efforts. And I'll turn it over to Josh to talk about the LADOT budget.
Thank you, Bubba. My favorite park in CD1 is probably LA State Historic Park. It's easily one of my favorite parks in the city. I live downtown, so it's really easy to get to. I'm there all the time. I wish it was open a little later in the day. As you know, the city's finalizing its budget for next year. And with last year having the most traffic fatalities ever, it's really critical that LADOT gets all the funding that it's asking for. So we've sent a call to action out, and we need everyone to either show up at City Hall on Friday or send an email in for Thursday at 5 p.m. LADOT has asked for additional staff positions to make our streets safer and more speed bumps around elementary schools. You can see there's 4 different memos asking for different things in here. I'm going to post the link in the chat for that call to action so you guys can engage with that. Again, we need this in either before Thursday if it's digital, or in person on Friday at 1 p.m. Now over to Jenny.
And just a quick correction, I was just informed that they're actually not taking live public comment, even if you show up at City Hall.
Okay.
It's just virtual.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jenny, and my favorite public space in City One, I think, is Elysian Valley. I live nearby and I go hiking with my dog pretty often. So last month we hosted our first fundraiser of the year, and we had a great panel of speakers from Culver City, including council members, school board members, former mayors, as well as a former LA City Council member. And we raised about 10K and also went on a community bike ride after. In that top photo on the right, you can see former Mayor Alex Fish, who brought a delicious dal dish in that Dutch oven that he's securely strapped to his bike. We love a good Indian dish. So next, we're excited to announce that Streets for All has partnered with Climate Ride as a beneficiary. And Climate Ride is a nonprofit organization that organizes fun and charitable events to raise awareness and support sustainability, active transportation, and environmental causes, all things that we can get behind. And I did the SoCal Green Fondo last month in Santa Barbara. We raised about $7,500. And thanks to the Algorand Foundation for a matching fund, we were able to double that to $15,000. And by the way, you can still donate through the end of May. So I'll drop the donation link in the chat in case anyone's feeling generous. And if you're interested in writing with us next year, or if you have any questions about how the Climate Ride works, please reach out, and I'll put my email in the chat as well. So on to other events. We were also at the Hangout Do Good Eco Fair in Larchmont this past weekend, as well as the Pedal Power in Culver City, which was a kind of like a mobility expo that was open to different types of multimodal riders. And in that middle photo, you can see Adrian, our steering committee member, who is learning how to ride a skateboard. So next is upcoming events. And we have our next volunteer meetup on Tuesday, May 16th at 6 p.m. at Union Station. So we'll meet there, we'll go for a bike ride, and then we'll come back to Union Station. There's Homebound Brew right next door, and we'll probably meet there at 7:30 for food and drinks. There's also Cicla Mini in Watts on Sunday, May 21st, and we're planning on tabling that. So we're gonna need volunteers. Please reach out if you're free. And lastly, our next fundraiser is with architect and urban designer Isabelle Duvivier on Sunday, June 4th. And now back to Bubba so that he can tell us about Culver City Pride.
Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, I think my favorite park in CD one would have to be Griffith Observatory, unless someone already took that, but I'll take it if not. Yeah, so Culver City Pride Ride and Rally we've only done this 3 years. So Culver City's only Pride celebration, and it's on 2 wheels, the biggest Pride parade on 2 wheels. We start at Sid Cronenthal Park at 4 p.m. We're actually doing an evening celebration this year, which is different than the last 2 years. And we're going to take that Move Culver City route and end up at Main Street in downtown Culver for a block party celebrating sustainability, inclusivity, diversity, all of that stuff, our vision for a better future for Culver City and beyond. And we would love, Streets for All would love to have you there. So yeah, the ride starts at 4. If you don't want to do the ride, but just want to come for the block party, that's at 6. We're going to have music, dancing, drag queens, food, face painting, kids activities, everything. It'll be super fun. So yeah, please come.
Okay, I think I'm up. My favorite public space in City One is sort of the same as Jenny's. I love Elysian Park. It's such a hidden jewel in the middle of our city. I wish it was safer to get there outside of a car, but we'll talk about that later. So talking about Hancock Park, I live just blocks from this school. A mother was killed and her daughter was severely injured and is still in the hospital, just walking her first grader to school. It's especially painful because I'm on the neighborhood council and I championed school safety improvements and actually paid money from the neighborhood council funds to LADOT to do it. And they were in the work for over a year and still hadn't been done. And unfortunately, they were put in a week after this crash to try to make it safer, but obviously too late for the people that were hurt. So yeah, another reason why we feel it's just so critical to properly fund LADOT The city right now is talking about a new speed hump program around schools, adding crossing guards, educating drivers, adding signage. That's all fine, but we really want real change. We want our streets redesigned so you don't have to risk your life, or in this case, lose your life just trying to cross the street. On to our wins and fails. I think I'm up for the first one. Permanent slow streets, on a more positive note, has gone in many areas. And I'm going to play 30 seconds of a longer video. I'll drop the link in the chat if you want to watch it, of them in Mid-City West. And I will just quickly speak to this. Sorry about the resolution. There's centerline treatments right in the middle of the street, saying it's a 15-mile-per-hour speed limit, and bollards protecting those signs. So those replace the temporary signs. There are curb extensions, which are missing at this intersection. You'll see them at the next one. There are chicanes, which is this right here in the middle of the street to slow down cars on especially long blocks. There's another one. There are the curb extensions, and it's just really an awesome, it has become an awesome program and something that's actually slowing down cars in our residential streets. So I'll go ahead and pause this video. I'll drop the link in the chat. Oh, and there's speed bumps, as you can see right there. Moving on to Katrina.
Thanks, Michael. I have to say my favorite public space in CD1 is also the same as Josh's, LA State Historic Park, but I want to put in a good word for MacArthur Park. I used to live nearby in Koreatown. It's a really important green space in a part of central LA that really doesn't have that much of it. And a fun fact is that you can fish in that lake. But I'm here to talk about Venice Boulevard for All. It's one of our signature issues, and it's finally going in the ground on the west side. Since we last checked in, the latest addition is the striping of the bus lane. You can see a lot of drivers are adjusting to it, but a lot of cyclists who are using the lane and the buses who are zooming through that bus lane in traffic are all getting some good use out of it. You can see the sign here that LADOT put up at an intersection near where I live in Palms, and it's along many of the intersections to introduce a new street design to pedestrians and cyclists and other people using the road here. I would love for some cars to learn how to use the new street design as well, but I'm sure that's going to happen in time. If you go to the next slide, we've got a few fresh shots of some infrastructure. On the left, there's signage to encourage vehicles turning right to slow down and check for bikes and pedestrians, which is what they should be doing anyway, but we're really hoping that this new street design is going to encourage safer driving behavior. And then finally, on the right, the very, very freshly striped bus only signage on the ground. This is probably from a week and a half ago, maybe a day or two after it went in the ground. Next is red paint to, support the bus lanes. And then we're really thankful to LADOT for making this project happen in Palms. We're looking forward to seeing it extended and made permanent. And there will be more opportunities to engage and celebrate the new infrastructure coming very soon. So stay tuned. Now over to Bubba.
You're on mute, Bubba.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Katrina. I'm sad to report that we had a pretty big fail of the month in Culver City, where 3 out of the 5 council members voted to take out and replace a beloved bike lane that was a part of a sustainable and revolutionary project called Move Culver City, in order to replace that same space with more vehicle traffic. So Culver City made certainly state and regional news, several articles in the LA Times. We had 200 speakers, 32 organizations, and several fellow council members, Katie Yaroslavsky. We had county supervisors, Holly Mitchell and Lindsay Horvath, all writing in and urging our council not to make the decision that they did ultimately make to remove a bike lane to bring back more car traffic through downtown Culver City. So we're pretty disappointed, but we had a huge showing at our rally in front of City Hall, and I wanted to show a quick video clip of that for the amount of time that we have.
In order to get to school, we use the bike lanes, we use the sidewalks, we use the free fare program with the local buses.
We have an epidemic right now of deaths on our streets. More than 312 people died last year because of poor infrastructure.
My sales have only grown since the implementation of Move Culver. Many of our customers walk from home or their offices to Village Well. Our bike racks are always full, and many other customers take scooters and public transportation.
It is about power. It is about who gets to be centered in policy.
We have more than a cross-section of variety of voices asking for us both to keep and expand Move Culver City, and that's what this council should do, and they should stop taking orders from people who have more money than they do.
This type of intervention is not just that it is the only way we're going to have a livable region. There's no more space for cars. You can't just pave the whole thing.
Thanks. Yeah, back to you, Michael.
Over to Cal.
Thanks, Michael. So what you see here is recently how a driver in the vehicle shown careened through a stop sign and almost went into the bike lane that you see. Luckily, the car is expected to make a full recovery. And no, in all seriousness, we're really happy that a curb protected bike lane is doing its job. Nobody was reported to be injured, and the curb was even thought to stop a full rollover. And so, like, this is exactly why we advocate for not just sharrows, but like hard protections in bike lanes, you know, this being the gold standard. And so we're happy that nobody was injured, and we'll, you know, keep pushing for more of this throughout the city, hopefully with fewer incidents like this. And back to Michael. Oh, my favorite public space, Highland Park, train stop, L line. I love how you don't have to compete with 4 and 6 lanes of traffic to access it. That's kind of a rarity throughout the metro system. And so I just really like that station. Okay, to you, Michael.
Thank you, Cal. And we give the car our best wishes. If you want to subscribe to our emails and socials, we're at Streets for All on all the social media. You can get involved at streetsforall.org/get-involved. Also, one more shout out to Lime. They have great dockless e-scooters and e-bikes all over LA, and we want to thank them for being our first sponsor. So we're very excited to have Councilmember Eunisses Hernandez here with us. Eunisses is a lifelong District 1 resident. She was born and raised in Highland Park, and she led campaigns, coalitions, and commissions that transformed local and statewide policy before running for LA City Council.
We may have lost Michael there.
Yeah, I think we did. Councilmember, are you online?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, do you mind if we start with the questions?
Sure, let's do it. Thanks
All
for
right.
having us. Before we get started, I just want to share that my colleagues, my Deputy Chief of Staff, Helene Rotolo, and my Transportation Deputy, Louis Leyva, are here on the call as well.
Awesome. Great to have
Thank
you.
you.
Cool.
Bubba, I think you have the first question. You want to take it?
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Jenny, and thank you, Councilmember Hernandez, for being here. I do have a question about the MacArthur Park Station. So Metro made headlines recently by blasting classical music on a loop at a very loud level to discourage unhoused folks from loitering in the MacArthur Park Station. And after a public outcry, Metro lowered the volume. And separately, Metro has a project to bring new vendors to the station above ground. So we wanted to get your thoughts on both the absurdly loud classical music tactic and get your opinion on adding more vending and retailers, not just outside, but also inside the otherwise, kind of sterile metro stations.
Thank you for that question, and thanks for having us. Obviously, do not support hostile infrastructure, whether it's through actual infrastructure, whether it's through sounds. Just something, our team has communicated from the beginning with Metro. That is not something that, we want to see. And around the second piece around bringing in vendors, I think that's a great idea. There's already vendors that exist. What we need to do is help bring the infrastructure that's going to support the existing vendors. But you look at other places like New York, other cities, they actually create models for entrepreneurship on their public transportation. So I would be in support of that, with the caveat that as a city, we commit to providing the infrastructure for it to be accessible, safe, like uniform. Like you go to Oaxaca, you go to Mexico City, you go to Portland, some of these places have uniform like vending areas. And I just think we need to provide some of that. So I'm all for it.
Thank you, Councilmember. I'm going to turn it over to Kyle for the next question.
Yeah, thanks, Bubba. Councilmember, as you know, there's a proposed gondola project that would take people from Union Station to Dodger Stadium. We wanted to see your take on the project because surely getting people to and from those 2 points without a car is a good thing. But do you think it's the answer? And also, do you, as a condition of the project moving forward, do you think anything should be done to the humongous parking lot that really could be better used as housing?
That's another great question. I have a lot of concerns about the project. I haven't been convinced that we can effectively move people in an effective manner, efficient manner, with the current project as proposed. I used to work at Universal Studios. I used to work in the parking lot. So I have years of experience in having and seeing moving people from one place to another using different mechanisms that aren't cars and things like that. So I want to see more details. I want to see more information. I believe that it could potentially have some impacts on the community in that area. I am always very invested in trying to figure out what other ways we can move people, like the Metro bus line that goes in just for Dodger Stadium games. We've been hearing that it's been coming off and turning off at 8 p.m. because of missing or not accessible bus lane infrastructure. So we're hearing these things come up. We're willing to figure out what are the best solutions, but I just have a lot of concerns about that project. I'm not fully convinced yet. And around the parking lots that are up there at Dodger Stadium, I hope that if that is a plan, that we hear about it sooner than later. Like we don't piecemeal this process, because we desperately need housing. But in that area, we also desperately need affordable, deeply affordable housing, and throughout the city, right? But I would hope that whatever we build would actually meet the needs of our community who is living there, and not just building for the communities that people want to see there. And so I believe if it's housing, it should be extremely affordable housing.
Thank you. Over to Jenny.
Josh, actually.
Oh, Josh.
I think it's me. I have a question about the city's budget. The city is currently going through its budget process. As part of the proposed budget, both LADOT and the Bureau of Street Services have seen modest cuts to their respective funding. This hits things like LADOT being able to respond to an office like yours that is asking for more bus and bike infrastructure, as well as reduce the amount of streets that the city can repave in a given year. We wanted to get your thoughts on the mayor's budget as proposed, and specifically if you have any thoughts on how we can fund to ensure basic city services like repaving and implementation of bike and bus lanes that aren't impeded by departments starved for funding.
So the budget is critically important, right? As we're talking about this and recognizing it, I am discouraged to see that there's some cuts in some of these departments, because when we've been meeting with these departments, they've been telling us, look, we have 1.5 people who work on installing all of the speed bumps in the city of over 4 million people. That's what the Department of Transportation has told us. And in a moment where this is what our department looks like, where we have over 20% vacancy rates, and to see a decrease in the departments, like I am upset about that, but we also need to take a step back. And the budget is one time in the year where we can make and move money and make impacts. We've been learning about other times in the year where we can move additional money for different projects. And Helene, please plug in and correct me if I'm wrong, but we're trying to identify, because we did not get everything that we asked for in this budget. We did get funded hopefully, you know, when it passes, safe infrastructure for Aldama Street, where we've seen, you know, hit and runs, where we've seen accidents. So that is something that we prioritize and we got in there, but other things didn't. So we're trying to find the other ways we can move money. But I think in a moment like right now where where things are so critical and we're seeing higher numbers of people getting killed on our streets, I think it should definitely, when we talk about public safety, like this is public safety. When we talk about prioritizing public safety, this is it. And so trying to uplift that in the budget process, but even after like the implementation of the budget, right? And when money doesn't get spent, that's what we're looking for to actually implement. This is the first step. The budget's the first step. Implementation is where it's actually key.
Got it. Appreciate it. I think next is Katrina.
Thanks, Josh. We're going to change directions to talk a little bit about, you know, a retrospective on what's happened in CD1 in the past and where we're going from here. We know that CD1 suffered from years of active transportation policy neglect under the previous council member. There might be a nickname that you might be familiar with. The fact is that 0 protected bike lanes were installed in 9 years. And he even tried to get all the bike lanes in CD1 removed from the mobility plan when it was going through council at the time. North Figueroa, for example, has been slated for protected bike lanes for years, but it's been languishing. But we've also seen progress, including new bike lanes on San Fernando Road since you took office. What are your priorities in the district to make sure people can safely move around on a bicycle without fearing for their lives? Are there specific streets you have in mind?
There are specific streets and intersections that we have in mind. A lot of them make up the high injury network. A lot of them are in our south side of our district because of the density of people that are down there. We have over 50 schools in CD1 alone. And so during the campaign, we visited some of these schools. We saw that the bike rack was full at Miguel Contreras, yet not a bike lane and from the eye can see in that area. So for me, I really want to bring safe infrastructure around our schools because in our district, it would cover a lot. But because also we know that a lot of our young people are going to school and going back home on their bikes. And so that's one of the things that we're looking at. We're trying to figure out other ways to bring additional safe street infrastructure that has been delayed. So when there's street repaving, we're making sure we're working with the departments to install the safe bike infrastructure. A lot of it also though is this work of cleaning up and harm reduction, because we're getting a lot of things from the prior administration that we're having to navigate through. Like in Angelino Heights, that first phase was the first administration. Now we're coming in to the tail end of that, and then we get to talk about phase 2 and what we would truly like to see. Hopefully green spaces and, you know, more concrete infrastructure for safe, you know, passageway for our community members. But I'd like for our young people to be able to go to school and back in a safe way. And if I could prioritize that and work on everything else, we will. But safe street infrastructure is a priority overall.
Thanks so much. Now back to Michael.
Hey, Eunisses. So in 2017, the city tried to install bike lanes on 2.3 miles of Temple Street. It's a street where 5 people were killed and 21 people were severely injured while walking or biking between 2009 and 2015. In 2018, Councilmember Cedillo teamed up with Councilmember O'Farrell to kill the project, saying there just wasn't enough community support for it to move forward. And people have been killed and injured in the 5 years since that decision. Temple remains on the city's high injury network, which are the 6% of streets that cause 70% of the injuries and deaths. Now that you've replaced Gil Cedillo and Hugo Soto Martinez has replaced Mitch O'Farrell, do you think there might be an opportunity to bring this project back to life, dust it off, and get it done?
Yes, get us up. Yes, I think that if this is the perfect moment. You know, my colleague Hugo Soto Martinez is very much understanding of the importance of safe street infrastructure. So am I, and having us border this, heck yeah, please follow up with us. I just don't see a better moment than now to do it.
Thank you. That was a very enthusiastic answer. I appreciate it.
Yeah, like if the plan is
Jenny.
there, like let's go, you know, like.
We love to hear it.
Yeah.
So this next question, it's very dear to my heart. Metro is working on plugging the current gap on the LA River bike path to eventually create a contiguous path between Canoga Park and Long Beach. a good portion of the path passes through CD1, and we wanted to get your thoughts on this project and also ask for any ideas that could be used to speed it up, assuming that you support it, of course.
So I have not heard of the project yet, but it sounds like a very exciting project and would love to hear more about it. If there's any way that we can help create a passageway that looks like that, I think we would definitely love to plug in, especially considering that a significant chunk is in CD1. So yeah, let's count on us to have that conversation. I'm supportive of that. I would just like to see what it looks like, because we want to make sure that there's equity. We want to make sure if there's businesses opening, that it, you know, gets to be mom and pop businesses, like that the infrastructure invested is equitable. So those are the things that I'd like to see, but that sounds great. Even when we did the ciclovia between Councilmember Heather Hutt and I, it was so cool to be, that was my first one. You know, I haven't gone to any before, so I was like, this is so awesome. Like, we need to do like a marathon size ciclovia. So yes, no, I think that sounds very exciting. I'd love to have more details.
What was your experience with ciclovia? What did you think?
I thought it was super cool. You know, my team went, like I rode my bike there, and I just recently started riding a bike in the pandemic from years ago, right? Like learning as a kid. And so being able to ride through the street, like seeing and different like modalities, right? Like walking, a stroller, on their like skateboard, on their like scooters, on their rollerblades. It was just a really heartwarming experience. So I loved it. I want to do it again.
Fantastic. Now to Michael.
I wanted to ask you about Stadium Way. Stadium Way through Elysian Park is really a highway masquerading as a local road. It has 3 lanes on each side, 0 sidewalks, and 0 bike facilities. We would love to see it reduced to 2 lanes on each side and use the extra lanes for protected bike lanes, letting people outside of a car safely get to all the facilities Elysian Park has to offer. This would also allow us to lower the speed limit on the street, which would make it safer for those walking or biking. So our question is, would you support and prioritize this project? It does border CD13 again, and a portion of the street would need to be repaved. So it would require that the Bureau of Street Services prioritizes the repaving and then LADOT restriping, but wanted to get your thoughts.
Thank you for that question. So we've been in conversation with different departments around beginning the process of doing the assessment of what something like that could look like. It would be great to create more accessibility for walking, biking, whatever it is in that area. We're for it. And so we've begun that conversation. I will say that, and I think y'all know this, but like to get to Elysian Park, like you mentioned earlier, Michael, like there's no public transportation to get there, but also like it's not really accessible through other modalities, such as biking. And so creating more access to that is also a part of this piece in that area. But yeah, no, it's something that it sounds exciting to us, and Louis is taking the lead on having those conversations to begin that assessment.
Great. Well, we'll bug Louis.
Yeah.
All right. Going over to audience questions, and there is a link in the chat. If you'd like to ask Councilmember a question, please put it there. And you can also vote on questions that have already been asked. So this first question says, you recently reversed an initiative to abolish height limits in Chinatown. When the housing market is so unaffordable, this person wants to know why further restrict the housing supply. Shouldn't we be encouraging more housing production of all types, including affordable, and not putting more restrictions in place? Would love your thoughts.
Yes, you know, this is adding the height limit to back into the Chinatown area was something that was driven by community. It wasn't like me deciding like, hey, all right, y'all, we're gonna put this back in there just to say like, you know, screw you to people. That's not what our intention was. Our intention was representing what community has desired and voiced their concerns of. We've seen in other jurisdictions such as Vancouver that did this in their Chinatown. Their Chinatown was eviscerated. And you know, we have started to get meetings with developers in that area. We've already seen the harm reduction that we're having to do from the previous administration of whole buildings going up with over 700 units, none affordable in that area. We're in deep conversation with tenants there who can no longer afford their housing, who are in the eviction processes. The eviction to homelessness pipeline is heavily being fed by the folks being displaced in Chinatown. And so this was a safe measure that community wanted and asked and demanded of us that we advocated for. And there is, on the other end, we are trying to move and push for the access to city land to build housing. We have the Lincoln Heights jail that we're trying to tear down so we can build housing and other community benefits. We have other city property where we're building housing. And so I would like to see more of that, but this is what community has voiced as them wanting to really have us step up for them for in the Chinatown community. So we did that, but we want to build. Go ahead, Helene.
And Councilmember, if I may, I just want to uplift as well that the height limit was restored to 5 stories on just one block in Chinatown in order to protect the Chinatown Central Plaza. So just want to clarify that.
Thank you. Thank you, Helene.
Thank you. The next question is kind of fun. Can you talk about your success in defeating an incumbent career politician, and what advice would you give to other new candidates just starting out?
Yes, so I will say that I think we started at an advantage because of how much anger and feeling there and resentment there was towards the existing office because of lack of response. And so I just want to set that landscape because that might not be the case that you're walking into if you decide to run. But the things that you should be looking into is building your community. Who are you going to call when you need to raise money? Who are you going to call when you need to have someone organize a fundraiser for you so they can invite their friends so that you can raise money? Who's going to be there to door knock with you? You need to start building that type of community, that type of base, plug into those type of coalitions, because you cannot do this by yourself. And so that's number one. Number two, so that was number one, building your community. There was a second piece. But I'll just talk about values real quick, is make sure that you know like why you're doing this. And because you're going to be confronted with so many decisions and each decision has monumental impact. So being able to understand what your values truly are so that you're not flip-flopping in your decisions, but that you can feel confident in what you're doing. I think those would be the biggest things. Raising money is difficult, but if you build your community, it'll be easier. And door knock, that's what I wanted to say, door knock. The money that we fundraised through our campaign link was mostly spent on paying a group of over 20 people just to door knock every single day. We knocked on over 67,000 doors from October to June to election day. And we did not send mailers. There was an IE that opened up that sent the mailers, but our money, we really wanted to meet the voter where they were at. A lot of them were homes, a lot of them were apartments though. And that beat mailers because they would get mailers, but you would be able to have a conversation with them to beat that. So I know I went long on that one, but I think those are the most important things. And one day I'm gonna write a book so y'all really know how it's inside here because it's a roller coaster, y'all. It's a roller coaster.
How were you feeling on election eve? Were you feeling very confident? Did you have any polling or were you going in dark?
We did not do any polling because, like I said, most of our money went to pay door knockers. But you know, we saw the gap that existed on that night, and we know our community, we know our base, and we know that our people will vote on the very last minute of the day. And so on election night, we were not discouraged. I know some people thought that they had won, but we knew that we hadn't lost. And so that's just because the gap was so small. Like we expected it to be much bigger, but 1,700 votes. I mean, we knocked on 67,000 doors. We knew that people were coming for us, even though they were going to come at the last moment. They were coming. So that was a intense day, but very grateful.
Hopefully that's motivating for other candidates. All you have to do is knock on 67,000 doors and you can get elected. Next question. So this is a question about a state bill. Would you support a bill to prevent landlords from automatically including the cost of a parking spot in their rent? Assemblymember Wendy Carrillo's bill, AB 1317, would unbundle parking from rent so that folks who did not own cars would not have to be forced to pay for parking or subsidize other people's parking. So
Hell
curious. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, 100%. Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that concise answer. Moving on, Jack would like to know, Marmy and Way is the ideal street for a protected bikeway. It connects the Southwest Museum and Heritage Square stations, plus North Figueroa bike lanes that lead to the LA River bike path. It's wide enough to add lanes and has very low traffic volumes. And he asks, are you in the design phase for a protected bikeway here?
I'm not in the design phase, but it's one of our priority areas. It's something that we talked about during the campaign a lot, like why they put a whole Gold Line station and didn't even put a sidewalk on the other side. Like, I could not understand that. If you know Marmion Way, you know what I'm talking about. One side, the station has a sidewalk, on Marmion Way, you don't. And so installing sidewalks, installing safe bike infrastructure, like people use it already. Oftentimes they have to walk through like debris and nails. So I drive through it every day. It's a priority, and we're figuring out what next steps we can take in that particular area to begin implementing some of these things.
Just curious, he didn't ask this, but when your office is asking for stuff from LADOT, are you guys getting pushback? Like they don't have enough staff and they can't attend to your needs, or are they able to do what they need to do?
It's always with like, yes, but just give us time. Like it's gonna take time, or like this is what it actually can look like, or thought partnership on if this is not the way, then maybe a different way. But no, they've been DOT and their leadership have just been an amazing partner to work with. And we got, a new 4-way light intersection at Avenue 37 in Figueroa. They helped us prioritize that. So they've been good. They've been good with us.
Great. Next question. There's been a lot of overdoses and drug use on Metro, even after the ambassador program implementation. How do you plan to keep transit riders safe without increasing police presence?
That's a great question. Police don't stop open air drug use. They don't stop overdoses. They have done a phenomenal job at responding, but we need to build additional tools to do that work. The Metro has invested in multidisciplinary teams. They've invested in PATH teams. They've invested in other teams, but it hasn't been at the level that it needs to. For example, at the MacArthur Park train station, we have 22,000 people that go through it every single day. But we have not invested in the actual services at the level that it needs to be. Well, that's one of our priorities. We're investing in MacArthur Park area, in that MacArthur Park station. We're trying to bring in a mobile overdose prevention team. We're working to bring in a harm reduction area and rest area there. We're looking to bring additional services so that we're not just relying on the fire department and the police to answer our overdose calls or open air drug use calls, because that's what's happening now. And nothing's happening. People still don't feel safe. So our vision is one of bringing care first and creating the spaces where people can go so they're not seeking refuge on our train system, because that's what's happening right now. There's not really places for people to go. So they're going onto our stations, they're going onto these platforms. And in the MacArthur Park area, just so y'all know, it's a trifecta where we have a Jack in the Box, which is a convening area. We have the Yoshinoya Alley, which is another convening area for open air drug use. We have the park where it's visited by thousands of people on a daily basis. So I believe we have not invested enough in the care first approaches that will actually address this. And we have not invested enough in the actual aftercare and the places where we can take people for care and rest. And so because of that, that's what we're investing in the Metro MacArthur Park area. But just you look at the budgets, you can't even compare. You cannot compare what we invest in criminalization and law enforcement responses versus what we invest in multidisciplinary teams or care first approaches. You can't compare.
Thank you. Next question. Hi, I live in the next city over, Santa Monica. I bike to your district frequently. There's no bike lane across the city of LA to get to CD1. Currently, I take Venice to the end of the bike lanes, then cut north to 7th Street. Any ideas, thoughts, and concepts to create a route downtown for bicycles? And I will just add, part of the problem in the city of Los Angeles is we really have 15 mini mayors that say yes or no to things. So maybe you could also expand on that, on just saying how can we have a more holistic plan as a city and actually implement it so things connect to each other?
This is a great question. I think I'll talk about it in two ways. The first way is that we are individual district representatives, but we're in a moment where you have many of these district council members who are aligned on this vision. You have CD1 connected to CD13, connected to CD4. CD1 is also connected to CD10. And we are all very much aligned in creating safe street infrastructure, bike lanes. And so I would just say that it does exist in that way, but now it's on you all, if it's okay for me to say this, it's on you all to develop that vision. What does it look like? What do you all want to see? Because right now you have a body where there's a lot of political will to make something like this happen. So that's what I would say is I would ask you all, what is that vision? What bike path does that look like to go from CD1 to 13 to 4 to 10 to even 8 and others? Because I don't have that plan. We've been talking about it again, like a marathon size ciclovia, but I would just hope that you all can put that together so that we can, you can move us, like vote so we can implement it. I think it's a great idea.
Well, I think the good news is the city has already voted on a plan for a citywide network of bike lanes, the mobility plan. Yeah, and I know you're familiar with our ballot measure, Healthy Streets LA. I just want to give it a quick plug because in March of 24, the citizens of Los Angeles can vote and can choose. And that would remove individual council member prerogative, which in your case and Ugo's case and other cases, it's not an issue, but in some districts it is. And I think that could be a huge step. So just want to say that.
I love that. Yes, definitely.
There's a question here about bike lanes on North Figueroa. I don't know if you know this full history, but North Figueroa, someone was killed. LADOT came in 5-6 years ago and suggested improvements. Gil Cedillo said no. LADOT said we really need to do this. It's a very dangerous street. And Gil Cedillo introduced a motion at council specifically directing DOT to not do the improvements. So just curious if North Figueroa is on your radar. It's supposed to have protected bike lanes on the mobility plan. Would love to get your thoughts.
Yes, we haven't as a team been updated on the most recent status of those things and haven't had a full conversation on Figueroa because we've been having to deal with other accidents and incidences. We had a young man who was run over riding his bike down in the Pico Union area recently. And he's now like an infant and he's like a 20-year-old young man. And so these are the things that we've been dealing with early on as we got in. So we haven't addressed Figueroa. We've been prioritizing our schools in some of these denser parts of our neighborhoods. But we can definitely talk about that. It's just something we haven't talked about yet.
This person would like to know what CD1 mobility project is your top priority currently?
For me, it is trying to connect some of our public housing to like our state historic park. So like William Mead to the State Historic Park, creating a safe walkway or bike pathway for the William Mead community to get there is one of our priorities. It's installing some very much delayed light, like intersection light infrastructure is another priority, especially on the Figueroa pathway. Like when we think about like Avenue 55. And so those are the two that right now that come up for me. But again, Marmion Way is one of those that we haven't discussed as a team yet, but it's one of my priority areas, considering how many people use it regularly to walk and bike and other things.
And also we want to uplift the Angelino Heights infrastructure improvements as well. Councilmember, if you want to talk on those too.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, Helene. But it's one, that I mentioned earlier that we've been working on at the tail end of it from the previous administration around trying to prevent some of the Fast and the Furious, like donuts, fast driving in the Angelino Heights area. Our team has been working to implement phase 1 and really starting to dive in and try to plan for phase 2, which is more serious and concrete infrastructure.
I just want to say I mostly loved that project. The one thing I would say is we put more diagonal parking on that street. And I know that was to narrow the lane, but the only challenge is once you put in diagonal parking, taking it away is a huge battle. And we could have put a bike lane there too. So just wanted to get that out of my system.
No, thank you for sharing that, Michael, because, phase 2 is coming up and it might be hard to take off, but like this is phase 2. So whatever we can do to help really improve that. I mean, it's a neighborhood that is surrounded by major streets, so creating more walkable areas, I think, is always in the best interest of our community. So keep
For sure.
us plugged in on that, please.
Great. Katrina would like to know, what is your favorite transit route through the city, if you have one?
My favorite transit route is because I think it's changed, the 81 Metro going to downtown that used to drop you off at USC. That is one of my favorite pathways, because it gave me access to a completely different part of the city, and I just had to be on one bus. So that's my favorite.
Jenny's asking, what's been the highlights and also biggest challenge of your first few months in office?
The highlights have been the team that we've built to do this work, because I don't think if I didn't have this team that we do, I would probably lose it. They just have been phenomenal at grounding, at finding solutions. So just the biggest highlight is that I'm proud of this team. The challenges have been to still believe in good faith, trying to act in good faith, trying to believe others are acting in good faith. It's very challenging when you see people actually make decisions that completely are going to impact your community and not theirs. It's always difficult to be in those situations. But, like I said, it's a roller coaster. Some days are really good and some days are very, very challenging. But again, the team, if it wasn't for the team, I don't think I'd be surviving.
Another question about state bill. Cycling on the sidewalk is legal in the city of Los Angeles, but it's still illegal in large swaths of LA County in California, and violations are not issued proportionally. 80% of violations for minor cycling offenses in LA County are issued to Latino cyclists. So the question is, if you would be willing to push the city to support Assemblymember Bryan's AB 825, which would decriminalize cycling on the sidewalk statewide.
And this is Assemblymember Isaac Bryan's bill?
Yes.
I haven't looked at that bill. Would love to look at that bill, but if it's from my colleague, Assemblymember Isaac Bryan, then I believe that the intentions are, guided in making sure what's the best for community. And so we would definitely want to support a mechanism that removes another pathway to criminalize our community. So yes, we can definitely do that.
Great. This question, what are your thoughts on connecting the Arroyo Seco river path to the future LA river path? I'm not even sure if those connect, but I will ask that question anyway, because that is the question.
So I haven't seen that. I don't know what it looks like on the map. So I had to get back to you on that one, if that's okay.
Of course.
But again, connecting rivers is good.
Do you have any last thoughts? We're almost out of time. We've got 3 minutes left. Wanted to give you a space in case you wanted to say anything to our community. This is a community of people that are very passionate about making the streets safe to just cross as a pedestrian, ride your bicycle, make transit more efficient. To be clear, there's a car in our logo. We're not trying to get rid of cars, but we're just trying to make the streets safer for all modes of transportation. So I wanted to give you a space in case you had anything you'd like to say.
Just that, I really appreciate y'all for bringing me on tonight. I look forward to working with y'all on implementing some of the solutions that you all have in mind. But please do not hesitate to reach out with suggestions, with ideas. We want to be a conduit to what you all are doing the work in and day out to make happen. So that's just what I would say is please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We are very much invested in this. I'm on the transportation committee, which gives us opportunities to put a lot of this through. Louis is doing a phenomenal job in making sure that we move our projects forward. And so the last plug I will say is, I think we all need to work together to really make sure that DOT gets both what it needs in resources, but also in staff capacity to actually do the work. because 1.5 people to do the speed bumps of a city of over 4 million people is not sustainable. We need speed tables. We need, you know, signs to go up. We need designs to actually be implemented that engineers spend so much time in, you know, making happen. So and that's going to take all of us to really change the personnel hiring process, to make it faster, to make it more efficient. And so that's the only thing I would say is that I think we should figure out how we can better push for that piece, because we can keep saying we want this, we want that, but we want an assessment, and it's going to take like 8 months to get that assessment. Why? Because there's not the capacity to get it done. So that's the only thing I would say is, how do we, like, let's work together definitely on that. But please, again, do not hesitate to hit us up. We want to make sure we can implement these things, especially if there's already the plans. You know, we're not trying to recreate the wheels here. We're just trying to put more air in those tires, or whatever modality you choose.
Does the city move slower than you expected before you were inside of it?
When it wants to. When it wants to move fast, it moves fast. When you're able to convince it to move fast, it'll move fast. But when it doesn't care, when it's not a priority, it will drag its feet until the end of time. It's from what I'm noticing. But, you know, we've gotten things done in a matter of weeks that have been stalled for over 9 years. So yeah, when it wants to.
On that note, Eunisses, thank you so much for taking the time, and to your staff for coming on. We really appreciate it. We'll be sure to follow up and on all these ideas. And if you ever need our support, please reach out. We are here for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate y'all. Have a great night. Thank you.
Bye.